So my name's Catherine and I'm a family consultant with Better Place Australia on the Respecting Elders program. So we connect with older people in the community who are experiencing difficulties sometimes within their family unit. We can get cases of all different types. So there's some that are quite serious, that involve measures of safety that need to be implemented, assessing someone's risk and then providing plans to keep them safe in those situations. And other times it's just things that aren't going well for the person, that they'd like some ideas as to how to approach their family to make things better for themselves. So probably a large scale of seriousness, and then of course other things that aren't so serious but still really affect the older person. So at the end of the day we had an elderly lady who'd gifted her son a vast amount of money to save his home in his own situation. Her asset assessment stated that she still had the money in her possession, so she wasn't able to get a pension or actually to enter residential aged care when she wanted to. So she was at that time forced to live with her son and his extended family in a fairly dubious situation where there was a lot of anger and family disharmony, and she felt that there was no way out at that time. So with our assistance we were able to find out her rights and advocate for her, and most importantly for her to make her own decision about how she wanted to approach the subject and how she did or didn't want to involve her family in those decisions. So at the end of the day, we're very pleased to say that she is in the residential facility that she would like. She still does have contact with her son and was provided with ideas on how to keep herself emotionally and physically safe throughout that period of time. So just talking about some different kinds of cases that we may see. There are still older people out in the community who do need to know their rights and also the rules around how they access aged care and how they can be empowered to spend their money the way they want to and to have family relationships that they want. For example, we might see a gentleman or a lady who are older and they've got adult sons or adult daughters who are living with them. They might have mental health conditions and be on disability pensions, so they may not be able to afford their own individual lodging, like a rent. We all know how expensive rents are. And so they depend on their older parent for housing. They might also have some addictive behaviours or drug and alcohol issues, and our older persons their parents can get to the point where they're not quite sure or don't know what to do about their adult child's behaviour, wanting to support their child, wanting the best for their child, but still not wanting to put up with financial abuses, dependence on them still in their latter years, and challenging behaviours such as verbal, emotional and sometimes physical assaults. So we can come in and empower those people by showing them all the different options that there are for support and making sure that they can make their own decisions in the way that they would like to, and also handle their family unit in the way that they would like to. With support from us, we call that supported decision making, so that we ourselves are not making the decisions for the older person, but to the best of their ability they can make those decisions themselves with those options put before them. And within that, I'd probably like to make sure that anyone who is thinking about accessing our service, that even starting that conversation is not accusing anyone of anything, or getting anyone into trouble. It's a free service, a confidential service, where you can have a conversation with someone who can show you all of the options, and so that you can make your own decision about how and when you would like to take action. So we've had a less serious case of a lady, and I think within the demographic of our older community, her role in the family had been to care for everyone, to do everything. And as the children have grown now and have their own families, she's found herself the main carer of her husband of very many years. And within that role, now that she's ageing herself, finding that role very difficult and providing the amount of care that's required very difficult. And someone like this, we find, can very often find it difficult to communicate with their adult children as to, actually, I'm not Superwoman anymore. I do need some help with this. I'm ailing myself and need some help myself. So coming together for a family meeting in a very non-adversarial, non-legal, friendly environment with support for everyone available is that the outcome of that can sometimes be a bit of a light turning on moment for adult children as to, oh, hang on, mum is 86, maybe she can't do the gardening herself anymore, and maybe she can't look after the grandkids 5 days a week and care for dad, who now is immobile. I mean, you know, saying it out aloud, it sounds very plain, but we all know that within families we get used to everyone's role, used to behaviours. It becomes an everyday thing. And a family meeting allows us to stop and take hold of everyone in the family and how can they be cared for appropriately without putting too much pressure on the older person. And that also means we can access care finder services and My Aged Care and ACAS services, which are all those services that assess for everything that's available for people to get help at home. So we can refer back into Better Place Australia for those sorts of things, or out of Better Place Australia if we don't have the exact thing that someone needs. That also might mean some financial counselling that's available, or any other services that are available we can refer to internally or externally. So an example that I suppose people may on the outside think is not a serious issue, but for the older person, she found it a very difficult issue. Her son was around when she was cleaning out the garage, another Superwoman thing that she was doing. And there was a piece of equipment that she didn't want anymore, was going to put out onto the hard rubbish. And so her son took that as, okay, well, I'll take that home, we can use that at home. Her other adult children found out about that and then insisted on being gifted that same piece of equipment brand new. So instead of giving away an unwanted thing, she ended up feeling like emotionally she had to go out and buy brand new things for her other children for what they saw as equality. So in talking to that lady, we were able to then suggest to her that it is okay to say no. And those emotional feelings of feeling pressured and, as you age, wanting your family around you, not wanting them to be annoyed with you because they might not visit, or something like that, and you want to see the grandchildren. Getting together with a family meeting for that family has been a fabulous way of all of the children concentrating more on the needs of the older people and less on the entitlement needs that they think they have themselves. And that's worked very well. She's getting more help at home caring for her husband because it was recognised that she couldn't care. In fact, she needed care for herself. So she's receiving her own personal services at home. And the husband is receiving more services at home to make things easier. I believe the children are actually coming in and assisting themselves a bit more, and to date I don't think there's been any requests for more items. I think preventative action is always the best, but I don't like saying shoulda, woulda, coulda. Should have, raised more respectful children. I think there's a really it's really important for older people to realise that as adults, they're not responsible for their children's behaviour anymore. And it's not through bad parenting that sometimes they come under these pressures, especially when we're dealing with older people who have adult children's where their behaviour may be so bad that they might need something like an intervention order or some other form of protection to protect themselves. It's really important for the older person to be reassured that this is not their fault as a parent, and we're extremely uninterested in older people taking blame for their children's behaviour. I think that's okay when they're 2 and 3 maybe. But as adult children grow, they do become responsible for their own behaviour. Addictive behaviours, drug use, other things that are stopping older people from living their best life and an independent, safe and happy life is not their fault. And we can certainly assist. If legal options are required, we can assist with that as well. I think it's very difficult for an older person to admit to them to use that word elder abuse. And we want to be very careful that if someone's calling us for assistance, that we're not going to say to them, well, your child is guilty of financial elder abuse towards you and you must do this and must do that. It's more about opening up a conversation about, this is what's happening in my life, I'm not comfortable with it, I don't feel good about it. Is there any suggestion that you've got to make things better or to improve things? And that's when we will all sit down and have a conversation about what is available, what options are available. Sometimes very difficult decisions have to be made. The only time that we, under our duty of care, would go over what an older person actually wants is if we think they are in immediate danger. And we do then call the police if we do think they are in immediate danger. In my 5 years, it's happened once. I was on the phone to a lady when her son arrived home and was clearly behaving badly, and I did call the police at that stage to keep her safe. She agreed with me at the time, but we rarely have to do that. It's just important, the whole auspice of our program is for a person to get support to make their own decisions, not for us to decide for them. Our experience is that people always want their family harmony. They want harmony. As they grow older, especially if they do end up in residential care, they want family to visit. They want the relationships to be comfortable and to be loving and to be cared for. So if there's any opportunity for that to be the outcome, that's definitely the opportunities that we would take. Advice for older people, if they feel they've got a situation, maybe they feel it's a really individual situation, doesn't fit into anything that we've spoken about so far, to pick up the phone, to talk to our intake team, and then to be engaged with the free and confidential service, as I've said before, to have that conversation about whether or not there is anything that we can assist with to improve the situation. Don't be frightened, we want to hear your voice. The whole program is about hearing people's voices, having their wishes known and supporting them to make decisions around making those things come true. I do want to mention one other thing that we do see quite often in the service, and that is often some confusion around powers of attorney. Not only how to appoint powers of attorney, and there's new roles that have come out like assisted medical decision makers, but also people who have been appointed power of attorney, how and when they actually start to act as a power of attorney. For example, if a person is diagnosed with dementia, this does not mean that they cannot make their own decisions immediately. Usually we find that as dementia progresses, the first thing that's required from a power of attorney is to assist with bill paying, and running of money. It's very difficult for some older people to be online and do bill paying and to go through the maze of finding the correct provider for utilities and things like that. But where older people might run into trouble, and even the powers of attorney themselves, if that is either one or two adult children together, that it's agreed on when it's appropriate to start enacting that power of attorney. And we're very mindful that a dementia diagnosis, or just because someone is 92, doesn't mean that they still can't act for themselves and make choices for themselves. So we do spend quite a lot of time negotiating with families around when it's appropriate to take on the role of a power of attorney, not just because someone has their 90th birthday and everyone thinks that they shouldn't be remodelling their kitchen. I've got a fantastic client who decided at 86 she wanted to redo her kitchen bathroom, new carpet. She had absolutely had the money to do it, and the children were balking, oh, you know, probably not going to be around much longer, why are you bothering doing that? You know, within those negotiations, she was quite able, of course, to spend her money the way that she wanted to. She had it there, she had it all available, and so she's now living in her unit that's been totally remodelled 2 years later. And so I just think it's important with that role of power of attorney sometimes to have that conversation within the family about when is it appropriate to come in and take on that role and then disempower the older person to make their decisions about where they want to live, what services they want to have, how they want to spend their money. That can be very delicate conversations within the family, but we can certainly assist with that conversation, the hard conversations.
My name's Phil Williamson. I'm a member of the community and I am retired. I volunteer on the Southern Melbourne Elder Abuse Prevention Network. I first became aware of elder abuse when we were with a friend, and he's a contractor. His mother was elderly. He had two sisters-in-law, one interstate and one who visited his mother occasionally. He and his sister-in-law had power of attorney. Local government services were providing shopping, home help, supervision of medications, and trips to the bank for his mother. I guess I could call her Edith. One day, Nick got a phone call, and the phone call was from his sister-in-law, but it was from his mother's residence. And he was a little nervous because when his mother had gone into rehabilitation after a medical episode, he'd discovered that his sister-in-law was claiming to be the next of kin. When he arrived, that was adjusted. So when she rang, I followed him round to that place. And sure enough, his sister-in-law was there, going through his mother's handbag, saying, I'm just going to pay some bills for her. And she had in fact got access to the codes for her banking. And the reason she'd been rifling through the bag is that she had a significant gambling problem. Nick tried to prevent his sister-in-law from going back, if you like, but the problem was that they were joint power of attorney. His sister-in-law tried to remove Nick from the activity, and she went to VCAT. At the end of that, the state basically took protection of Edith, but they left Nick in charge of her funds. And she wanted to stay in her own home, whereas I guess the state trustee was thinking she's beyond that. But they put in extra services and she was funding those herself, and things went fairly well for a while, but Nick found that some of the people from the service that had been, the commercial service that had been contracted, were not always putting the lockbox back outside. They weren't supervising the medications, and in the end, he thought he'd tried his hardest for his mum, but he would have to put her into care. And that's when he came into contact with Kingston Centre, who were great. They had a couple of facilities, both government residential care facilities, and Edith happily, well, not quite happily immediately, but finally happily set up residence in one of them. So Nick continued to visit, but it meant that his sister-in-law could not visit regularly. And I think in the end, Enid did all right, but it was just watching it. And I suppose for me, when he suddenly got this call and went to his mum's place, I followed him and I just thought maybe there was something going on. Later, his sister-in-law accused me of being a witness against her. But all of it was just about somebody who had a problem and was trying to solve it with someone else's money. All I really did was put him in touch with the right people, and anybody could do that by just looking in a directory. But the thing that probably helped was just a bit of sensitivity to the issue, that it wasn't just something to look past. And I think the other thing that was important was that it helped Nick step up a bit. His two brothers were deceased, and so he suddenly realised that if he wasn't there acting like the adult, he'd been doing plenty, watching the maintenance on the place and checking on his mum, but all of a sudden he had to become her supervisor, and that changed things a bit. In the situation where somebody is not sure about what to do, if they think it's possibly trivial, I'd still say make the call. Nobody will care that you've made a call by accident, or that things are resolved in a positive sense and that you were mistaken in what you saw. They'd much rather have the contact made. I think if someone is feeling that they are being threatened by a family member or a close contact who is effectively a family member, then they've got to remember that it's their life, their choice and their rights. If they feel that they are being threatened, there are lots of supports out there. I see lots of people I've got a 92-year-old neighbour. She manages her family. She would occasionally talk to me and say, I think they want to put me in care. And I'd just have to say, what do you want to do? It's your life. And that's the point. If you're older and you're feeling threatened, then get some help, but don't necessarily be confined to the people who are in your own family, because they might not be the most helpful if they're really busy. If you are thinking that there might be some issue that you need to pursue, then listen to the ideas that are presented by today's host and use the contacts that they're providing. I think that's probably the best source of information you can get.